And we're back to the exciting book of Judges. So yesterday we had kind of like an intro, and I spoke about the cycle of the Israelites that caused the judges to arise, which was basically them rebelling against God, basically apostasy, then the consequences of apostasy. Then they cry out to God. God sends them a deliverer. The person delivers, the person conquers their enemies. They have peace for a while, and then they go back to apostasy. So it's just like a whole cycle and cycle. So in chapter 3, we start off by learning that God tested the Israelites by leaving several of their enemy nations in the land. And this was to teach the generation that didn't know about warfare, some war, the people that hadn't experienced battle, and also to see whether they would obey his commands through Moses, the commands that he gave them. They didn't. They intermarried with the nations and served their gods. Othniel, do you remember Othniel? He was the son-in-law and nephew of Caleb, who married his daughter Aska. Othniel was the first judge, and he warred against the king of Mesopotamia for 8 years and delivered the people. By the Spirit of God, he had the power to do this, and God empowered him through his Spirit, and they had rest for 40 years. The judges of Israel after him were Ehud, Shagma, Deborah, Gideon, Abimelech, Tola, Jair, Jephthah, Ibzan, Elon, Abdon, and Samuel. Deborah was the only woman in this judges, and she was a very prolific woman. I think she's even one of the most popular judges, as in everyone knows the story of Deborah, who was a woman. She was a mother in Israel. She was actually a civil judge. I think she was the one that was a civil judge, because she didn't go to battle. She wasn't a military commander, but she called on the person to go to battle. And we all know the story. She used to judge under the tree of Deborah. It was called the tree of Deborah, obviously maybe because that was where she used to judge, and she was the one who called on Barak, to come and fight against Sisera and his armies who were oppressing the Israelites. And we all know the story, obviously. Most of this chapter was dedicated to Deborah, but I wanted to speak about Jael. Jael was the wife of Heber, who killed Sisera, and she came from a tribe of metal workers, right? And her husband had an alliance with the Canaanites. So I put 2 and 2 together. Metal workers, and Sisera and his army were they had iron chariots. So I have a feeling that he probably worked for them, and they had some sort of treaty. And Deborah and Jael were used by God to deliver the people, because remember, she killed Sisera in a very gruesome way. God gave Israel victory against Sisera's army using the elements. I found this out also. Did you find that out as well? How rain created mud. It rained, and rain created mud, and mud immobilized their iron chariot. So they had to come down and flee by foot, which put them on an even playing field with the Israelites, which was why they were able to defeat them. Now, I remembered when, I think it was a tribe of Joseph who had these people in their land, and they were like, oh, we can't defeat them because they have iron chariots. But if only they had trusted in God. See what God did to disgrace their chariots of iron. In chapter 5, verse 20, it also says the stars in their courses fought against Sisera. So I don't know what that means literally, but then I believe that, God used the elements to defeat Sisera. Deborah's story is an ancient piece of poetry, and it's Deborah's song, remember the end, yes, chapter 5 was Deborah's song, and it was an ancient piece of poetry, and it gives details of central Old Testament themes. One thing that stood out for me was when she called out the responses of the tribes of Israel to the battle call. Yeah, so apparently the Reubenites and the Jordan tribes didn't come out to fight. And that's the tribe of Dan again, didn't come out to fight. And she called them out in her song. I noticed that. And here's what I learned about God. God can and does use anyone to do his will and serve his purposes. These 4 judges we read about demonstrate this, especially Shagma. So Shagma was the shortest one that we know, but from what we understand, he was a Canaanite. He was a foreigner, but God used him. Ehud was left-handed, but God, and he was from the tribe of Benjamin, which was the son of the right hand, and he used him. Deborah was a woman, a wife and a mother, as well as a civil judge, but he used her. As the king of creation, we learn that he used nature and the elements to bring victory to the Israelites over Sisera's 900 chariots of iron. Truly, God uses the base things to confound the wise. Because in all of this, it seemed as if, looking from the outside looking in, it seemed like the Israelites or even these judges stood no chance. But he does all he does with his power to show his heart for the overlooked, for the downtrodden. God truly is the God of all. I loved this story and I love the lesson that I've learned today, and I can't wait for us to come back tomorrow where I will share lessons from Judges 6 to 7. And I hope to see you here. Bye.